Hey everyone, today I'm going to be going over the results of the survey I did. I got 75 responses, which was really great. Thanks to everyone who filled out the survey. So yeah, let's get into going over the responses. So the first question you had was, how old are you? As the graph here shows, most people were between 11 and 17, but we did have some older people. There were some people who were in the 30s and 40s. You do see mostly young people at competitions, so I kind of expected these results, but it was quite interesting to get a decent range of ages. 11 was our youngest age. I wasn't really expecting anyone much younger than that, but I was kind of surprised that the youngest person was 11. Maybe I was expecting maybe 9 or 10 being the youngest. So the second question was, what country are you from? We got a really wide range of responses for this question, which was really interesting. We got people from all over the world. We had people from Brazil, Egypt, Vietnam, and other kind of exotic places, at least to where I'm from in the UK. So that was really interesting. As expected, we had a lot of people from the US, as that's where most of the English-based cubers are. So, yeah, from the graph, we got a lot from North America, but we also had a lot from Europe as well. A lot of just small individual countries. We had a lot from the UK, but we also got some from, Sweden we had 4, Germany we had 3. So, yeah, when they all added up, Europe made quite a significant proportion. I think there were more people from Europe in the end than the USA, I think, but yeah, I'm not quite sure on that. It was very interesting to see where people were from. So for the first question I asked, what is your main event? As you can see by the graph, the overwhelming majority of people picked 3x3 as their main event. It was 45. But some other still fairly popular events were 2x2 and 4x4. They had a decent proportion of people who were maining them. Some less popular events were 6x6 and 7x7. There was only one person doing either of them. And nobody at all picked 4x blind or 5 blind, which was kind of interesting. Those aren't very popular events, but I'd at least expect 1 or 2 people to go for them. So yeah, that was quite interesting. So next question was, what is or are your favourite events? I got 74 responses to this, so a lot of people did this question. 3x3 made up the majority again, as with the last question. And then the rest of the events were fairly decently well spread out, as you can see. Megaminx and Pyraminx were the next 2 most popular ones, with 6 and 5 people doing it. It was quite interesting to know that, apart from 3x3, everyone likes events to a sort of equal standard. And then next we had, what is your least favourite event? So this was a lot more spread out than what your favourite event was. As expected, a lot of people picked Clock. But then next was Pyraminx with 13. Now, I know Pyraminx is quite a short event, there's not a lot going for it, but having 13 people put that as their least favourite event was quite unexpected. Megaminx as well, having 8 people. I usually think of that as quite a fun, good event, so that was again a bit of a shocker. So Square One as well, 6 people who didn't like that. I know it can be quite a difficult puzzle with all the shape-shifting and that, but I think it's a really fun and unique cube to have in WCA. So yeah, again, not one I expected to have a lot of people disliking. Moving on, the next question was, how long have you been cubing? So we got a really wide range of responses for this question. The highest was 39 years, which is really surprising. I wasn't expecting anything like that. The lowest was 2 months, so yeah, quite short, but there was a massive range there that gave us with the highest and lowest. And overall, everyone had been cubing for a combined time of 241 years, which is quite interesting. And the average amount of time spent cubing was 3 years and 3 months for each person. So the next question was, what is your 3x3 PB? So again, we had a big range here. We had the lowest of 3.21 seconds. So that is incredibly fast. And the average PB was 9.52. So yeah, just under sub 10 there. And most of them were around the 6 to 10 seconds mark. And for the averages, we had the lowest of an average of 6 to 7 seconds, which was the same as the person who had the 3.21 PB. We had a range of 43 seconds of averages, so almost reaching up to a minute for the lowest person, but not quite. And on average, the kind of average cuber, if you like, averaged 13.72, so I think that would be maybe a little bit slow, if you will, for an average PB of 9.52. So those two didn't quite exactly correlate, but again, some interesting results. So for the 9th question, I asked, what is your 3x3 method? For the majority of people, they picked CFOP with 61 people using it, but there were also 7 people using Roo, so that was the second most popular method. We also had some kind of unusual methods with LEOR and Russo being two I hadn't heard of before. We also had Free Frop Petrus. Those both had one person using it, and ZZ finally had two people using that. So the next question was, which of these can you solve or do? So everyone could do 2x3 and 3x3 who took the survey. The vast majority of people could do 4x4 and 5x5 along with Pyraminx one-handed and Megaminx. The event most people couldn't do was 5 blind, which I kind of expected. I think that's one of the most difficult events. Big blinds are definitely very hard and very impressive when people are able to do them. A lot of people could do blind, which I was a bit surprised at. I can't do blind myself, but I guess a lot of people have put time into that. 60% of people could do it. I was expecting it to more be around kind of 40 or 30, as it's an event you kind of get into after you spent a decent while cubing, and it's also quite hard. I've found it almost like being able to learn the solve the cube entirely over again. But yeah, 60% of people being able to do that is quite interesting. So the next question was, how many competitions have you been to? So 17 people said they've been to 0 competitions, which was quite interesting. I didn't really expect that, as there are more and more competitions every day happening, so more and more new competitors, but 17 is still quite a decent proportion, as you can see on the graph. But now, moving on to people who've done competitions, most people had one competition, that was 11. And then, as the amount of competitions increased, the amount of people who'd gone to that amount of competitions generally decreased until you got into the kind of 5+ range, people who are quite experienced in cubing. And we had 10 people with 5 to 10 comps, and for 10 to 20 we had 12. Also had people who've gone to 20+ comps with 8. So yeah, there are definitely some people who are quite prolific when it comes to going to competitions, with one person the highest there being 45. We had a combined total of 549 comps, so that's quite a lot. And looking at the graph again, most people had been to 1 to 5, but also there were a good share of people who had been to a lot of competitions, so that was quite nice to see, know that people are engaging with the community in person, as we don't usually do that very often, with it mostly being based online. So the next question was, what events would you like removed from WCA? So most people didn't want any removed. There were 50 people who would have liked none removed. But the second most popular option was clock. 19 people wanted to get rid of that. I can see why. It doesn't really fit in with the other puzzles, and it's just generally hard to judge at competitions and things. But I would still keep it, as a lot of people have sunk some time into it, so it'd be quite important to them. Some other events people didn't really want to remove. These were nowhere near as popular as clock, but we had some interesting events like FMC and 4 and 5 blind. Some people wanted them to go. Again, I'm not really sure why. Again, with FMC at least, it doesn't really fit in with the rest of the events, but I do think it's very interesting and unique. 4 and 5 blind are very, very impressive to do, and I certainly think we should keep them. But it was quite interesting to see the other people's opinions. Moving on from that, the next question was, what puzzles would you like to see added to WCA? So, as with the last question, most people didn't want any removed, with 22 people wanting none removed. But people were definitely happier to add events and take them away overall. Some of the events people did want to add was Ready Cube. 10 people wanted to add that. I can see why. I've practiced Ready Cube a bit, it's quite fun. But the most popular one people wanted to add was Cubiminx. 18 people would like that. I think it would be interesting to have some higher and lower order Megaminx puzzles in WCA, but I kind of feel it wouldn't make Megaminx a side event anymore. It would kind of make it a bit more like an N by N. But I don't think that would be a bad thing. I definitely think Cubiminx could be something quite interesting, but then again, as with some of the events on here, like Ready Cube and Cubiminx especially, they could become quite a bit like 2x2 and Scube. It's just really about turning speed in the end, and you don't really want that. Some interesting ones were Curvycopter. 8 people wanted that. I've seen Curvycopter gain traction a bit in the community of people who want to get that added. I can see why. It's a very unique puzzle. It's got jumbling, and no puzzles have jumbling yet, so I think that'd be quite interesting. But the hardware out there, as far as I know, isn't that great, so that's probably why there's only 8 people going for it. There were quite a lot of people who did want some fairly obscure events. We had 2 people wanting Clock OH. I've seen that done before, but it's Not an event that would really fit into the WACA, I think, but again, interesting to have so many different opinions. So next question was, were you for or against the removal of feet? Now, this is quite an interesting question I found. Most people didn't really mind or care, 44% there, as you can see by the graph. But of the people who did mind, the majority were against having feet removed, and I'm certainly in that category. I think we should have kept it. There are some disadvantages to it, but again, I go along the same kind of line of reasoning as with clock. As a lot of people have sunk time into it, and I don't think it really takes anything away by having it in there. But there was a lot of people who didn't want feet in the WCA, as you can see there, that blue section, did still make a decent proportion. So yeah, quite interesting results there. I'd expect a few more people to be against it, really. And the amount of people who didn't really have an opinion, I was kind of surprised at, but maybe they'd got into cubing after feet had been removed, so yeah, there's probably some causes for that, of course. And the second to last question was, how many cubes do you have? So we had an average of 43 cubes per person, and 343 was the highest amount of cubes someone had. And yeah, just thinking about that, I've got around 70, I think, at the moment, and that takes up a decent amount of space in my room, so having 343 would be very impressive. The lowest amount we had was 2, and in total there were 3,208 puzzles people had. So that was quite interesting, yeah. A big range in the amount of puzzles people had. So the last question was, what is your main 3x3? So there was a lot of different answers for this, there being a lot of different cubes, as expected. The most popular one was the GAN XS. Second was the GTS3, and those two are both very popular cubes. Third place, a little bit of a surprise, the Diantennion. That was, not one I was expecting. I made the Diantennion, I think it's a really good cube, but I didn't realise it was that popular of a cube at all. So yeah, that was quite interesting. The graph, I split it up from what share of the market the cube brands have. So you can see Moyu, Gan and Chi make up most of the market when it comes to cubes. But it was quite interesting to see that Dian was bigger than YJ. I'd expect more people to do main YJ cubes, as Dian have kind of almost gone out of fashion, if you will, as they're not really making very many speed cubes at the moment. But then again, they have released Tengen very recently, and as you can see, that is quite popular. Yushin, I don't think have released any 3x3s in a while. They certainly weren't one of the top picks, as you can see there, of the most popular cubes. I think their most popular cube was the Little Magic. So, yeah, interesting results. So that's that when it comes to all the questions. Thanks to everyone for filling out the survey. It was really helpful that we got so many responses. I know I did shut it a little bit early, but after 75 responses, it was quite a few to sort through. So I think I'll just keep it at that. I think it was decent enough size of people to get a fairly accurate representation, though. Thanks again to everyone who filled out the form, and thanks for watching. Bye.